And away we go. This is an extension of what we do Sunday nights on television Sports Wrap. No Joe Schmidt, no Chris Long. He is Alec Ausmus. I am Darren Doogie Wolfson. The purpose of this back and forth, Alec is just back from Fort Myers, Florida, where he spent, 3 days? 3-ish days?
2.5, yeah.
Yeah, Twin Spring Training, including Friday the 21st, which was Media Day. So Alec had all sorts of time to formulate all sorts of takes, have all sorts of conversations, shoot all sorts of video, talk to so many different people, including a ton of players. So we figured this is a good space for him to opine about his experience. Before we get to some specific players, Alec, overall, just thoughts that stick out as you reminisce about your 3 days in Fort Myers, what jumps out the most?
Right out of the gate, Darren, one of the things I noticed right away was the overall structure of practice. And what does that exactly mean? Well, this was my third straight season going down to Fort Myers and covering Twins in spring training. The last 2 years, all right, the clubhouse would open around 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. And then after the media was allowed to usually go in for about a half hour, after that, the last 2 years, you wouldn't see a soul for about 2 hours. They had different meetings going on. I don't know what kind of meetings. I mean, they would set TVs up. I imagine they were breaking down film. Who knows? All kinds of stuff. But 2 hours, right? You go 2 hours without seeing a soul. This year, completely different. After that clubhouse closed, about a half hour in, 15 minutes later, guys are back out on the field, sprinting, getting to new positions. I asked Rocco. I was just curious, is there a different structure to the practice this year? And he looked at me and all he said was absolutely. And after prying into it a little bit more, that has to do with the way the season ended last year, the way they lost their way out of playoff contention last September. I don't remember exactly what, 9-16 or something in September last year. And they remember that. And they knew things had to change this year. Out of curiosity again, I asked Carlos Correa, do you notice the structure change of practice? And he said absolutely. And he said that he and Rocco talked about it before spring training started. So your all-star player, the best player on the team, arguably, and your manager, Rocco Baldelli, talking about what needs to change in spring training. And it was obvious. I mean, guys were literally, when they knew they had to go to their next station, which isn't 5 or 10 feet away, it's on a whole nother field. They are running there, okay? I jokingly say this. One time, Jose Miranda had to use the restroom, and he wanted to make sure it was okay, or that coaches knew why he wasn't on the field. It's because he had to quick go use the restroom. These are grown adults, right? And they're asking, essentially, if they can use the restroom. So the structure was different. And it was cool to see. I hope it works. Maybe, and who knows, maybe that will end up having nothing to do with the outcome of the season. But there's a much more business-like feel to spring training this year, and I noticed that right away.
I mean, I'm okay with that. This is Rocco's 7th spring training, year number 7 for Rocco Baldelli as the Twins manager. Alec, it has to be the collapse of last September. And hey, you know what? It wasn't necessarily the pitching. It really wasn't. It was the offense, whether it was Royce Lewis, others, failing miserably down the stretch. Yeah, 9-16. Plus, hey, let's give some love to the Tigers, who went in an unreal run, right? I mean, it was the combination, but that was the all-time, to me, worst collapse in Twins history. So things had to change this spring training. Okay, so you had a conversation with Correa. Do you get a sense that there's complete buy-in? That it starts with Correa. Correa is undoubtedly the leader in that clubhouse. There's only so many adults in that clubhouse. Correa is one of them. Griffin Jacks, Christian Vasquez, whatever you think of Vasquez on the field, absolutely an adult. Byron Buxton, Bailey Ober, Pablo Lopez, but the list doesn't extend much beyond that. Now, we'll get to Ty France, Harrison Bader, Danny Coulombe, right? So I don't know about those guys per se, but I'm just telling you, there's only so many adults in that clubhouse. But starting with Correa, do you get a sense from chatting with Correa, others, that there is a complete buy-in with the changes that we're seeing here in Fort Myers?
Yes, Correa included on this, obviously. Every player I talked to, and I talked to over 20 different players in the days I was down there, all of them, I didn't even have to bring it up, all of them mentioned last season and how it ended and how they came up short. My follow-up questions to that was usually, does it carry over to spring training, or do you have to close that chapter and move on? And some of them even said it can't. You can't just forget about that. It's crucial. But back to Carlos Correa. He is by far the alpha male of that clubhouse. When he speaks, everybody shuts up and listens. And rightfully so. Carlos Correa has won a World Series. He does lead by example when he's on the field. He's a great defender. Last year, before that foot injury flared up, he was hitting at an all-star caliber level. So when Correa speaks, the team listens up. If Correa's bought in and if Correa is getting on guys, and he's doing it in a teammate way, when he's chewing some butts a little bit at practice, I asked him about that, like, Carlos, is it tough to get on guys in spring training? And he said no, because they all have to understand that it comes from a place of love. That was his exact words. If Correa's getting on guys this spring, and the way he is, they have to buy in. If your star player like Correa, who is a clubhouse guy, he's not a hothead. You've talked to Correa before. He's not a hothead. I mean, he's a good interview. He's very respectful to the media and to the clubhouse. But more so with Correa is plantar fasciitis. I am by no means a foot doctor.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, we can talk about all we want Correa's leadership. It's hard to lead when you're not on the field. Has he figured out what cleat to use? Like, what are the chances? I mean, heck, we know plantar fasciitis now 2 consecutive years. It can rear its ugly head again. Like, what is the confidence factor that he can play something like 140 games this year? And it may not all be at shortstop. He may have to DH a little bit more than we expect. But I'm just thinking, I want his bat in the lineup for 140 of the 162 games. How realistic is that?
According to Correa, it's very realistic. He said his feet are great. I mean, he told me he's way more educated on his feet now. And he said as an athlete, that's one of the strangest things that you would think you would really have to educate yourself on. But he said there were so many things that he didn't even realize the stress he was putting on his feet. So he's more educated now. And he obviously has the money to pay for the top-end doctors and foot specialists to tell him, to help educate him on stuff. But he's confident. I asked him, I'm like, Carlos, are you tired of talking about your feet? I mean, it's just such an odd topic. And he said, I get it. I understand the position I'm in. I understand why it's a question. My feet are good. I'm ready to play ball. So time will have to tell. But he did say a big reason why last season went the way it did was because the, quote, superstars were not on the field, meaning him, Buxton, and obviously Royce Lewis. And I don't know what the numbers are, but the amount of games those three have been on the field at the same time is astronomically low for how many games they've been teammates with the Twins.
Can we say that Royce Lewis is a superstar? A-plus person, right? We both love Royce Lewis. Maybe my favorite guy to talk with in that clubhouse. But I'm just wondering, like, we saw him finally slump last year. Now, maybe he was still overcoming some of the health hurdles. But for the first time, I bet for the first time since, heck, maybe in his baseball life. Like, I'm guessing as a 5-year-old, he kicked ass, okay? As a 10-year-old, he dominated, right? Sure. Like, he's never had any sort of on-the-field hurdles to overcome. He was the first pick in the draft coming out of high school. He climbed through the minors. He would have been here sooner if not for the injuries. When he has played, he has always succeeded. Except for the end of last year. I don't recall before August and September of last year him swinging and missing this much, him striking out this much. I just wonder if we need to see him bounce back. I have all the confidence in the world he can. I just don't know, Alec, if I can call him a superstar right now.
That's fair. I guess to rephrase that, maybe most potential to be a superstar. What was it? The 2023 season. I was at the Grand Slam year where, I mean, every time he had bases loaded, it seemed like he was producing and hitting Grand Slams.
Playoff series. Yeah. I mean, he was the first pick for a reason, right? Like, you expect the first pick in the draft to be a superstar, and he's young enough to get to that level. I just don't know if I can get there yet. Maybe I'll get there in August. If we have this conversation again, halfway point of the season or, the 3/4 mark of the season, I may say, okay, Royce Lewis, you are a superstar. I just can't get there quite yet.
Aside from hitting, a topic with Royce was defensively, playing third base or second base for that matter. I asked him, where are you most comfortable? And he said he said this. He didn't care necessarily if it was third base or second base. He just wanted to know ahead of time so he could prepare. When I was down there, he was strictly third base. And I think Rocco even said Royce Lewis, for now, third base. That's locked in. But Royce, defensively, third base, it looked like. I saw Brooks Lee take quite a few grounders at short. Second base, up in the air a little bit. I saw a handful of different guys there. Eddie Julian took a couple ground balls there. Willie Castro was taking some ground balls at second base. Luke Keeschel was taking some ground balls. Now, he's not your opening day second baseman.
No, but he might be in 2026.
Yes.
When we do this a year from now.
Yeah.
Yeah, remember the name Luke Keeschel. I'm telling you. He was in the prospects game, All-Star weekend, had an injury setback. But, they love that kid. So, I'm just telling you, when we have this conversation a year from now, don't be surprised if we're talking about Keeschel, opening day second baseman 2026.
That's awesome.
So he's not that far away, I guess is my point.
Sure.
What if he's the second baseman mid-July?
Definitely could. I mean, the way injuries we've seen have happened with this team, anything's possible. But Royce just said he wanted to be prepared for wherever he was going to play defense. And for everything I saw, third base, lock it in.
Okay, so opening day is March 27th in St. Louis. Hey, guess what? They will face, in all likelihood, maybe the Cardinals have announced this, Sonny Gray. So you're facing a righty on opening day. Ryan Jeffers, catcher. Stop me if you disagree. Ryan Jeffers, catcher.
Yep.
Ty France, first base.
Yes.
Willie Castro, opening day second baseman. Correa, short. Lewis, third. Then in the outfield, is it Larnach in left, Buck in center, Wallner in right, or does Wallner play left, Larnach in right? But against a righty, I'm thinking it's Larnach and Wallner. Then does Harrison Bader DH? Or is he still too good defensively, even though he hasn't played a ton in the corners? Would you play him in the outfield, DH, Wallner, or Larnach? I would imagine Wallner, although the arm plays big time. I mean, Wallner's arm is off the charts. But you disagree with any of that?
No. Now, the pitching plays into this. I saw Wallner in right a lot in spring training, and Larnach, Austin Martin, Harrison Bader, left field. I can't remember. I maybe even saw Austin Martin take a few out in center with Buck. Mm-hmm. But no, I don't disagree with that at all. The pitching definitely goes into it. You nailed it with Wallner's arm. I wish I didn't get a chance to chat with Larnach or Wallner while I was down there. I don't know just where they're at mentally, physically. They look fine. I mean, everything looked okay. I saw them both take a little BP. They're swinging the bat just fine. But no, Harrison Bader. You and I talked about this too, Doogie, when the Twins signed Harrison Bader and his base running, his base stealing ability. And in conversation with Derek Falvey down in Fort Myers, he overemphasized that stealing bases isn't really a priority for them. So and that's fine, but Harrison Bader could be really valuable in other ways. He still has decent speed for, what is he, 30, 29, 30? I don't remember.
30, 31, somewhere in that vicinity. I mean, still in the prime of his career. That was a good signing. I mean, they had waited.
Yes.
I think they were waiting for the price to come down to a manageable number. They've had interest in him in the past. But, I'm thinking Bader can be in the opening day lineup. He is going to play a ton. Even though on the surface you might think fourth outfielder, there's going to be a number of opportunities for Bader. And I just think France is going to make the team. That there's a comfort level. You think about Rocco, it's C.J. Cron back in the day. Carlos Santana. I'm not suggesting Ty France is even in the same stratosphere defensively as Santana, but just the comfort level with a veteran. So I'm thinking France makes the opening day roster. That's how he gets his $1 million. That's a shrewd move. Have him earn it.
Yeah.
Have him show here in February and March that he's ready for March 27th. You can make a determination on March 26th, but I think France is going to make it. I like those two moves, France and Bader. You were saying those guys were kicking butt. I get it, it's BP, but still, I mean, oftentimes this time of the year, pitchers are ahead of hitters. You told me in the office the other day, France and Bader look locked in.
Yes, and as we saw in yesterday's spring training game, they both hit home runs. But Ty France, great guy. Man, I just talking to him. Interesting story, right? In the offseason, he wanted to go back to some of the basics of hitting. He said last year when he struggled with Seattle and Cincinnati, maybe even the year before, he was focusing way too much on analytics with hitting. This offseason, I did not expect this. He worked with Denny Hawking, former Twin utility man, Denny Hawking. There was a connection through the Seattle Mariners where Denny was more local for Ty France. I'm not sure where Ty France spends his off seasons, but Denny Hawking was nearby. So he works with Denny Hawking, of all people, to simplify his swing. And he comes into the Twin spring training, and from what I saw, he was swinging a great bat. France also said he feels he was unfairly graded as a defensive player at first base by just baseball writers and certain metrics. I don't know exactly all the metrics that he is referencing, but he said when he's healthy, he said he's one of the best players in the league. That's great confidence. And in 2022, you could have argued in Seattle, his 1 year that was all-star caliber. He was an all-star. I wouldn't say even just all-star caliber. He was an all-star that year. That year, he could say he was one of the best players in the league, but his confidence right now is through the ceiling, and he was swinging a good bat. He's a good clubhouse guy. Taking ground balls at first base, I don't know. I didn't get to see him pick balls out of the dirt or anything like that, but he's got a good mind. He was even teaching Eddie Julian some things at first base when they were taking reps. So a good clubhouse guy, but Ty France, the confidence is there. I just wonder if he does get into a slump, whatever he was worried about, where he had to go work with Denny Hawking and analytics and getting this perfect swing, like does he dip back into that mentally throughout the long grind of the season? Right now, he's in a good place. And I asked Rocco, I said, Ty France seems to me like he has a clear head. Is that a good sign? And Rocco expanded on how they expect some good things out of Ty France, but he also said he's not going to grade a spring training performance for a guy like Ty. He's not just going to summarize what a guy does in spring training solely on making a roster decision on Ty France. But what helps Ty is they need a first baseman.
That's why he's making it, right? I mean,
yes,
the home run yesterday helps, but just based on what you just said, screams Ty France is going to be this team's opening day first baseman.
I agree. And who's backup? Jose Miranda?
Well, you tell me. So, of these four, Miranda, Julian, Lee, Martin, those four, not all four are making the opening day roster. Now, inevitably, all four are going to get time with the Twins this year, right? So, if one or two start with the Saints, we see a million roster moves. Over the course of 162 games, the Twins will probably end up using like 10 or 11 starting pitchers. Probably 18, 19 different relievers, if not more, and way more than 12 or 13 position players. Over the course of a full season, you're using almost everybody on your 40-man roster. You're making other moves to free up a 40-man space for a guy. But when talking about the opening day roster, March 27th, of those four, Martin, Julian, Lee, and who's the other one that I mentioned? Miranda. Yeah. So Miranda, Lee, Julian, Martin. Of those four, Alec, who's making the opening day roster? Who isn't making it?
Here's somebody, Edward Julian, in my opinion, is on the bubble big time. And I had a chance to chat with Eddie. What is your mindset? What are you working on this spring? He said he obviously has to play defense, but that's not his huge focus. He's a basket case right now at the plate. I saw him doing some batting practice, some BP in the cage, and every swing he was just getting frustrated. He wasn't getting his hips through the way he was trying to, and he was so focused on his swing, and he slumped big time last year. I would say Eddie Julian is on the bubble. Now, on the flip side of that, Jose Miranda, I don't remember exactly his offensive numbers last year, but they weren't terrible, if I remember right. Like Miranda had moments last year where it seemed like we were starting to see.
Well, remember that run he had? Was it 12 straight at bats or 13 straight at bats? It was just this ridiculous 3 or 4 game stretch of hit after hit after hit. We know it's there. I just don't know where he fits in defensively. Like, is he the backup first baseman / backup third baseman? How much do you trust him at third base?
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to figure out. But I think you trust him. Of those four, I think you trust Miranda the most right now. In 2 years, probably Brooks Lee. But right now, of those four, I think you trust Miranda at the plate the most.
I would agree. And Miranda's confidence right now, he just having been through spring training, but this is his in the big league setting. This is 4 or 5 now for Miranda. Maybe it's his fourth coming in as a big leaguer, and it shows. And talking to him, he just his confidence is different. He knows what he should be doing more. And that might sound cliche, but I'm kidding. I'm not kidding about this. These guys, even Louis Varland, like a guy like him doesn't seem quite as nervous. You know, they're adjusting into their roles more. They know where a timeline in spring training where they want to be at. Brooks Lee, opposite. He when I talked to him, he didn't tell me this, but I got the impression that he knows he might not be starting up with the big league club. Like it seemed to me like St. Paul as his starting point. He kind of knows that. I don't know. I mean, he didn't tell me that, so I don't want anyone to think.
It makes sense. I'm just telling you, Alec, going back to Twins Fest weekend, some conversations I had at Target Field.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if Brooks Lee starts the season in St. Paul, which is fine.
Yes.
He'll be up with the Twins eventually. But just talking late March, I won't be shocked if he is not in St. Louis.
That's fair. Yeah, that's okay. I mean, he got a taste of the big leagues last year. He got kind of that eye-opening, holy crap, first time here moment out of the way. He performed. He got a hit. But
he did. He also slumped, right?
Yes.
Another guy, maybe for the first time in a really long time, dealt with some adversity, right?
Yeah.
That it was really, really hard. Yeah. And hey, like I get it, right? Like it is a major jump to go from AAA to the majors. We saw it. Hey, Alexa, off. That's to tell me that it's time to change the laundry. I like to get the laundry for Droogie from the washer to the dryer, which I'll do in a few minutes. But it's a really hard game, and like he slumped. And how did he handle that slump? Right? And so there's some things. I mean, it's the ultimate mental roller coaster baseball is.
Yes.
And I think it beat up Brooks Lee at times last year. So him starting in St. Paul, rebuilding some of that confidence, wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing.
And what I saw, who's spending a lot of time working with Brooks Lee, is Carlos Correa. Obviously, they're both taking grounders at shortstop, but it wasn't just about taking grounders. I would multiple times would see Carlos Correa talking to Brooks Lee, even when they were stretching, even when guys are playing catch. Those two are I imagine it's not about what's for lunch. I imagine it's baseball, and it's Carlos Correa telling a not rookie now, but young player, here's what you need to be doing. Work on this, look for that. And that's where Correa, as I said earlier, is the leader in this clubhouse. But long-winded answer, Darren. Brooks Lee probably opens the season in St. Paul, but as we just said, not necessarily a bad thing.
Before we wrap, let's spend a few minutes on the pitching side of things. You had a nice conversation with Joe Ryan. How is Joe doing? I mean, heck, you think about that injury at Wrigley Field. What was that? Late July of last year.
Yeah.
How did that impact the rest of the season? Do things perhaps turn out differently if he doesn't get hurt? Now, again, the offense failed miserably down the stretch, those final 25 games. So maybe it's the same outcome even with a healthy Joe Ryan. But is he in a good spot health-wise right now?
He says he is. I mean, I don't, and I have no reason to not believe him. He looks good. I saw a few of his bullpen sessions. I mean, he and pitching coach Phil Mackey were working hand in hand. And
Pete Mackey, Phil Mackey. I think Phil Mackey, our friend Phil Mackey, would happily take those paychecks. I know Phil is kicking butt with Score North. He's doing really well. But if he could get those Pete Mackey paychecks, I promise you, Phil would love to have those.
I've done that before. I've called Phil.
So have
I. But Joe Ryan, off the field, got engaged this offseason.
Nice.
His personal life is in a good spot. He looks good. He's coming in healthy. What's awesome to think is how good, if healthy, Pablo Lopez, Joe Ryan, Bailey Ober. That's a three-headed monster that the Twins potentially have right now. And all three of them are healthy. And Joe Ryan, he knows. When I was talking to him, he knows what could be in front of him this season. But he, as a lot of athletes do, he gave me the answers of how he's kind of just focused on one day at a time. And that's not a bad thing. But he knows that this season could really be the coming out party for him. We saw it, 2 years ago? Or we even parts of last year at times? Joe
Oh, I
Ryan
thought we
was,
saw it last year. He needs
yeah,
to now sustain it for 6 months.
yes,
He needs to
yes,
sustain it for 32, 33 starts. It's in
yes,
him. He just
yes,
has to go do it. But yeah, if he does it, Alec, imagine the contract that he'll sign. Now,
yes,
he still has a few years until outright free agency, so the arbitration game can get weird. But if the Twins
sure.
want to offer him a nice contract extension, they could eat up some of those arbitration years. Imagine the contract that he could be setting himself up for.
Yeah, and Bailey Ober. I love talking to Bailey Ober for how he's just a gentle giant. I mean, he's just such
Well,
a
he's a
huge
pro's pro.
guy,
I'm
but he-
telling you, I know for a fact.
yeah,
There's not a lot of adults in that clubhouse. He 100% is one of those adults.
yeah.
Not that
And
old of a
on his-
guy, but I'm just saying the way he
Yeah.
carries himself. Maybe
yeah.
it's being a
And
dad, whatever it is. But
I was just
Bailey
gonna say that.
Ober, I'm telling you, it's a clubhouse with. There's only so many guys that truly get it. And hey, some of those young guys are still figuring out how to get it. It's not a knock on them, but there's
Yeah.
only a select few that truly get it. He is one of those select few.
And it says dad etched or like cursive writing on his glove. I mean, so he takes that so seriously with the multiple kids that he has, and that's great. And you see these kids at spring training and stuff. But Bailey Ober, I think right now is my dark horse to really carry over from the brilliance he had last year. And I'm glad he got a taste of some of that brilliantness last year. I know he had a little bit of trouble. Was that towards the end of the season? But how many consecutive starts last year was Bailey Ober just brilliant? I mean, shutouts, no hitter, not no hitters, but close, right? Like he was going deep into games and just dominating. And to have him come back, I didn't get to watch. I did see one of his bullpen sessions. I didn't get to see him do any live BP. That was, I think, Wednesday before I arrived, or right before I got there. But Bailey Ober looked good. Joe Ryan looked good. Pablo Lopez looks good. Question mark on who's a fourth and fifth starter if they have a 5-man rotation. I know Chris Paddock is coming in, kind of hanging out in the wings, and Chris Paddock told me he knows darn well this is a contract year. And he seemed a little nervous about that because he said if he has another season-ending injury, the reality could be his career's over, or it drastically changes. He won't be a starting pitcher anymore.
I'm shocked they didn't trade him. I thought they were going to trade him. I was told in December, Alec, they had a deal lined up, but they would have pretty much just given him away and had to eat a little bit of money. And I think they just came to the realization, why are we giving a player away and eating money? That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Sure. And so, yeah, I mean, there's enough off days, right, the first few weeks of the season. Is that why you're alluding to the potential of maybe a 4-man rotation, at least early? Because the idea is a 5-man rotation, right?
Yes. And I would like to, I know Zebby Matthews is a possibility, but David Festa, the Slim Reaper, I love it. I know he got banged up a little bit last year, but that's okay. Like, it's going to happen, especially when you're young. I'm glad he tasted that because he looked very confident in the 2-3 days I saw him in spring training. He's even walking with confidence. Guys, they razz each other, right? They're teammates. And David Festa's dishing it right back to guys. And I don't remember who told me. It was a guy that went up again. It might have been Harrison Bader. Told me like David Festa's got real stuff. So you hear that from a guy that's a veteran and a young player like David Festa. So I can't wait to see what David Festa potentially develops into this season.
Who is your pick to click in the bullpen?
Ooh, okay. Here's some of the options. Cole Sands. Hear me out on this. Cole Sands. I love chatting with him. Great interview. He was put into some high leverage situations last year and he performed. His confidence is up a notch. Love talking with Cole Sands. Darren, do you think Michael Tonkin, do you think he makes the 40-man?
All right, well, let me start writing down some names. So we know,
yeah.
All right, Darren, I mean, Jax is their best reliever, but Darren will be the closer. Jax may get some ninth innings.
Sure.
Coulomb is in.
Yep.
Alcala is in, right?
I'd put Alcala in.
Yeah. Varland
Sands,
is
I would,
in?
Ooh,
Sands is, of course, in, yes.
Yep, Sands and Varland. In. Put Varland in for sure.
I mean, how many relievers are they keeping? So that's Sands, Duran, Jax, Coulomb, Alcala, Varland. Who am I leaving out? I should have done a little bit more research before this back and forth. Who am I forgetting?
Gosh. I do feel like we're missing one, but
Topa's in.
Topa, Justin Topa. Yep.
Topa's in. Okay. Where exactly does Tonkin fit in?
And that's what's tough.
And Brock Stewart. Brock Stewart, hello.
Stewart,
I mean,
he's in.
He's healthy.
Yeah.
I mean, Brock Stewart is so darn good. Hello. Thank you. So Stewart, so where exactly? Well, heck, they have this Rule 5 guy. I don't know if you saw Castellano, this guy they picked up Rule 5 from the Phillies. His stuff looks really good. I wonder if they can work out a deal with the Phillies where they keep him. He starts the year in St. Paul. That would be fantastic. But I just don't know. Where does Tonkin? I don't see it. Right. Sands, Duran, Jax, Coulomb,
Stewart
Alcala,
is
Varland, Topa, Stewart. Hey, I'm a Cody Funderbrook fan, by the way, but there's an option there. So Cody's not making the opening day bullpen. I don't see where Tonkin fits in. I really don't.
Odds are stacked against him. I chatted with Tonkin, and he said it's 18 seasons of professional baseball, not all Major League Baseball. But he said when you've been doing this as long as he has and you've gotten DFA'd as many times as he has, he doesn't get nervous anymore coming into things like this because he's proven himself enough times. But when you put it that way, gosh, you're right. When you list all the options in the bullpen, boy, I don't see where he fits.
I mean, you can see why so many prognosticators, the Fangraphs of the world, view the Twins bullpen as, no joke, the best in the American League, perhaps the best in baseball. This bullpen should be really, really good.
Yeah, Brock Stewart. He's
healthy, right?
He's healthy, and he got the tail end. We saw him quite a bit last year.
Yeah.
I mean, Griffin Jax and Duran, those two are flip a coin, really, who you want to be your closer. I mean, that's a good problem to have.
Well, I imagine Duran's the closer, right?
Yeah.
But Jax is, to me, if you're asking me who is the best reliever, it's Griffin Jax.
Yeah. Oh, by far.
And Duran is fine. He's good. But I'm just saying, I think Griffin Jax is one of the 5 best relievers in the game.
I'm glad you listed out all the guys, because when you actually hear all those names, I do agree. That is a heck of a bullpen. Like, tell me a better one in the American League. Like, that is incredible.
Yeah, I mean, right now you feel best about the Twins compared to everyone else. How about final thoughts, Alec?
Final thoughts for me are, the division's good, right? 3 teams made the playoffs last year, but the Twins should still be favored to compete, maybe even win the darn thing. I know last year was disappointing, but unfortunately it boils down to who's healthy and the team being for sale. I asked a couple guys if that's looming over their thoughts, and for the players, no. They at least that's what they told me.
As long as the paycheck clears, I don't think they care.
Correct. So overall, final thoughts. This team, there's a ton of optimism. I felt that way last year as well, especially coming off a playoff series win. But maybe the pressure isn't there this year in a good way. Like there isn't a ton of expectations on this team, so they should be able to exceed some expectations. But I just want to see Buxton, Correa, Royce Lewis. You just want to see them on the field 75% of the season and just see what happens.
That's it. If you can promise me that, Alec, there's a reason why the Twins are the betting favorite to win the division. We just laid it out. Best bullpen in the division. Okay, Ober, Ryan, Lopez, if each can make 32 to 33 starts, that's 95 of your 162 games. You feel really good about those 3, your chances in a lot of those games. To me, I said this to Derek Falvey a couple weeks ago. I think it's the best team in the division. I don't know if it's the best team in the American League, but for the division, with all due respect to the Tigers and Royals and Guardians, I think the Twins have the best chance to win the division.
Well, and I don't know if they have the highest payroll out of the division, but it's not huge, obviously. I mean, it's decent, but to accomplish what they maybe could accomplish this year with not being the Dodgers and the Yankees and Red Sox and things like that. I'm excited, Darren. I think it's 36 days till opening day at Target Field, not season opener, but when we can see the Twins in person up here in Minnesota, about 36 days away. It was 40 on Saturday. So, yeah, this would be 36. And I'm excited. Bring on baseball, man.
I love it. For Alec Ausmus, I'm Darren Doogie Wolfson. Copyright Joe Schmidt. That's a wrap.